When I made my argument for Gotham Knights being 30 FPS in 2022, it came from the place that the consoles, PS5, Series X and S, were not as powerful as they were perceived to be. I wasn't making an argument based on PlayStation's game at 30 FPS and Xbox's game at 30 FPS. That was not my focus. As someone who likes and plays single player games, the focus was Gotham Knights. Its developers came out and said, our game has a lot of detail to the world. We created a game with untethered co-op. Basically, for the most part, you're hosting with some server capabilities, another player who can go around your world doing what they want. This particular system, many games use online to do it. When you host co-op with any level of locality, you see challenges on your hardware as the Series S with Baldur's Gate 3, which is even not a action game like Gotham Knights, and that game itself will struggle in that scenario. To that, the internet said no, the game needed to be 60 FPS. It was not possible. The devs were lazy. They said all kinds of things to that effect. Now that we have Until Dawn, I'm bringing up the case saying, ladies and gentlemen, there's another 30 FPS game here. It's a PlayStation game, but we're not hearing anything like those concerns. Somewhere, somehow, I think the conversation about Starfield and Hellblade have also popped up. There's also the conversation of Avowed, of which I am for 30 FPS if that's what the developers are able to bring to the table. I play games at 120 FPS, 4K if they allow me, 60 FPS, 4K if they allow me, and if I'm interested enough, I'll play the game at 30 FPS. To this, there are more and more comments that want to justify gamers being what I deem unnecessarily upset at Gotham Knights at the time. Keep in mind, I read the caveats on the box of the Series X and the PS5 in many videos telling gamers that Xbox and PlayStation basically shielded themselves by adding a caveat that such performance metrics that they were touting were only available for software that supported them. Basically, if the game supports it, the console can do it. But really, the hardware was basically, in a sense, old school hardware. And one thing about console is you can't compensate, you can't do anything. Whereas somebody on PC can simply make changes or adjustments to their hardware, and it can tap the game or tap into 60 FPS. I've even seen people tell me that the reason Gotham Knights is 30 FPS on console is because they wouldn't turn off ray tracing. But I told them, I said, okay, the version of Gotham Knights on PC and console, according to Digital Foundry, is basically the same. Go and turn on and off ray tracing and see if you can get 50% more frame time, and then we'll be able to agree with you. They refuse to do the test. They're still concluding something that they can test but won't test. So even on the PC and the console side, I keep seeing these problems. Now, I want to highlight a few comments. I'm not bashing you. I just want us to talk about this because we cannot justify the unnecessary leg jerk or knee jerk of gamers, because now we've gotten a better understanding. When we did not have a better understanding, we could just come out and say we were wrong back then. We had no clue what was going on, and it would all be fine. But what I'm seeing is people wanting to justify back then. No. One of my audience members says Gotham Knights was one of the first games of this generation to release at 30 FPS. So it's no surprise it faced backlash. I agree. He says Starfield deserved criticism because it's a first-person shooter where higher frame rates are crucial. Well, excuse me, how many games from back in the day did we play at 30 FPS? Starfield is a slow game. It's not as fast-paced in a sense. It was criticized because Xbox and PlayStation fanboys were at a precipice, butting heads at the time. Spider-Man was coming, and that game was also, was going to be about 60 FPS. This person said Hellblade 2 promoted as a magnum opus for Xbox for years, but the Xbox hardware is limited. Again, you're not, Raul, you're a PC gamer, so you should know this, because Hellblade 2 plays at 60 FPS on PC. And then he said Hellblade 2, as a magnum opus for years, was obviously going to be scrutinized because it was a big thing coming from Xbox. The console was limited. It didn't matter how big. They could have taken it and put a freaking balloon on it and floated it in the air. The Xbox console is what it is. It's literally locked in hardware. You see, Digital Foundry came back a few years later and they ran some tests with the Xbox Series X kit. This is a hardware device. And I followed this thing very carefully because as somebody who works with the game engine, I knew what I was talking about at the time. Instead, I was getting dragged. People were calling me a shield. People were calling me a this. People were calling me a that. And I was telling them, guys, I think we're mistaking the reality of, this particular, package in terms of what game engines and video game developers and video games look like. And Gotham Knights has a genuine reason why the developers have left the game at 30 FPS. But nobody wanted to pay attention. So all this talk about, oh, this game did this, so it deserved criticism, and this game is doing that. No, that's all shifting the goalpost and allowing for a lot of this madness that gaming is very, very full of to continue. And I am one of those people who my tolerance levels for that has basically been dried up, seeing that I was at the center of the abuse for so many years. Digital Foundry eventually took a Series X kit. This is basically an Xbox Series X that was basically broken, that AMD took and converted to these desktop kits and made available only in China. And they ran tests on the game, including all kinds of games, and then they came back to Gotham Knights. And they tested Gotham Knights. Then they added a 7900 XTX and allowed for the GPU to go crazy to test out the capability of that CPU. The game could not achieve anything more than about 50-ish FPS in some scenes. It will go higher, but you could not get that consistent performance. Look at the game here. The game is doing 51, well, on this particular kit anyways. But the reality is this kit itself is a PC. It doesn't process, nor does it carry out tasks like an Xbox Series X, which has to share VRAM and all of the above, and just the PS5 as well. So already they're showing you a much, the best of the best case scenario, and the game is not hitting 60 FPS. It's going close, but it's not. So I would say with even a 10-15% reduction, if we account for the Series X, the game could not hit 60 FPS. And they concluded that they made the right decision locking the game at 30 because that's where the game could go. See, I followed this thing from the technical expertise. Another interesting instance with the, Gotham Knights game is a game like Tom Clancy's The Division. One of the developers came out years ago from the Division community and talked a little bit about why a game like Outriders was locked as an online game. I remember Youngyear was making this particular video complaining about this. Why is this game online? Why did they not give us a single player game offline? And he came out and said, when we made The Division, the hardware was potato. We had to run things on an AI, on the server, things like AI, things like all kinds of different processes so that the PS4 at the time and the Xbox, One could actually get the job done. So there's a lot of technical knowledge surrounding this stuff. Again, when gamers have a knee-jerk reaction, we should not excuse it. We should come out and say we're happy that we have better understanding, not sitting here pointing out all that. And I think what may be going on is people running interference now for PlayStation because now PlayStation is exposed as having had a game that is not released at the 60 FPS mark. This same game is a game from last generation, which through backward compatibility runs at 60 FPS on the PS5. This person said, Raul continues and says, these games were more relevant and presented as major releases by Microsoft, which is why they drew more attention. No, it's because there is an Xbox tax. That's why they drew more attention. Let's not soften the blow. In fact, I thought I was going to be done with this, but no. I'm going to start picking this apart now. And then they said, in contrast, you can't compare them to the remake of a nearly 10-year-old game that received minimal promotion in the interest from gamers. So what you're telling me is because gamers are, in a sense, either aware or not aware, will bring in the judgment of the game. It doesn't matter. What we're seeing is 30 FPS and 30 FPS, and I'm showing it on both sides. I showed the 30 or sub 30 FPS on Zelda, and people defended Zelda and said it's on old hardware. Even if that old hardware itself has 60 FPS titles. People were like, well, how many 60 FPS titles are there? Y'all are jumping like crickets all over the place. It's hard to actually, for you to piece the argument together and follow it, it's very challenging because the argument is simple. Here is a game, or here are these games at 30 FPS that caused outrage and caused people to mock them. And here's a PlayStation game at 30 FPS and no one is outraged and no one is mocking it. You guys continue to prove that particular thing by saying, well, the reason it's not being mocked is because of A, B, C, D, E. And the reason this one got mocked is because of A, B, C, D, E. I don't care. Why? Because you're not giving me any technical reasons as to why these games you've called, like Hellblade 2 and Starfield, you're not giving me any technical reasons as to why they were not 60 FPS, nor are you giving me technical reasons as to why Until Dawn is not 60 FPS. Because I can give you even a technical reason why Until Dawn is not 60 FPS, because like I said, I've been following game development for a long time. This game was done in Unreal Engine 5. Let me throw it out there. Unreal Engine 5.0, 5.1, 2, and even up to 3 has a lot of challenges in terms of performance. In fact, on the project that we were working on, we were making so much advancement in the project on 5.3. When 5.4 came out, we had to lose a significant chunk of one of the mechanics that we had built, and we sacrificed it so that we could move to Unreal Engine 4 because we knew we'd get a huge performance bump. So I know exactly what I'm saying, and I'm not just saying it out of because of some YouTuber rando. I'm saying it based on the evidence and the facts that I do know. I have decided I'm going to put myself in this whole thing so deep so that we don't have conversations where we're mistaken or we're just spouting stuff as knee-jerk reactions. I'm interested in us actually learning and getting to the bottom line and the truth, because the video game industry has been shrouded in a lot of mystery. And that mystery I seek to demystify if I possibly can. And so, Raul, you said, putting it all aside, 30 FPS is not fine in any game, but that doesn't make it make a game unplayable, especially a game like Until Dawn that's even less action-oriented than Hellblade 2 was. Which, even if a game is more action-oriented, that game is actually much more performance-seeking. Which is actually the irony that I'm seeing here. You need, because I know how these games work, a game that is actually firing VFX, that's firing a lot more AI, is a game that is much more tasking. Hence, a game like Gotham Knights should be given the benefit of the doubt compared to a game like Until Dawn, which you're not firing as much in terms of performance needed, scenarios. So again, there is no justification for Until Dawn being at 30 FPS, and that's the point that I'm making. And it's just a point that y'all need to just say, sure, simply because the technical knowledge is there. Developers who've actually come out to point out these things are there. And we know how Unreal Engine 5 and Unreal Engine 4 work. And we know how different video games actually would deal with things in a different scenario. Somebody was telling me about Hogwarts Legacy and said, well, Hogwarts Legacy is more demanding than Gotham Knights. I'm like, when in the world has a game with untethered co-op been less demanding than a single player game where all the experiences are straight up curated for you? All kinds of excuses. And it's almost frustrating because, ladies and gentlemen, no offense, we're giving these excuses because people want to run interference for PlayStation. All I've done is just say the skills aren't balanced. Look at PlayStation here. Look at another game here. And not only that game outside of Xbox, there are Xbox games that got dragged for the same thing a PlayStation game is being defended for. And this by itself is why I'm making this video. It's why I'm going to make more of these videos. This one has gone on too long. I'll leave it open. If I see any more of these comments, we'll point them out and we'll see that they're not logically sound. I don't think they are. But thanks for watching. Appreciate you guys so much. Peace out.